Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and in today's video let's talk a little bit about the cockpit design philosophy of Airbus aircraft. Namely, we are going to be talking about the overhead panel and why you've got some normal switches, then you've got guarded switches with a black guard on them, and then you've got guarded switches with a red guard on them. So let's get right into this, and yes, this is the type of information that you would absolutely be thinking about after you've already completed your first couple thousand flight hours and when you're cruising over the Atlantic at night. Now, let's go ahead and first of all have a look into the different types of switches that we've got available over here. So first of all, there is the normal kind of push button, like for example the generator push button. Pushing that is going to cause, something, but the Airbus is backing it up. The Airbus is basically preventing any significant impact of pushing that button on our flight. Now, as a little anecdote here, try the APU bleed push button in flight and you might find a little different impact. But then again, it does take time until the aircraft depressurizes, because pressing the APU bleed button is going to turn off your engine bleeds. So again, it does take a little time in which you can easily correct that mistake. Unless there is a mechanical malfunction in the button, which can lead to funny results. Okay, that would be a different story. So that much about normal push buttons. As you can see, no great impact by pushing them, and the airplane is basically backing us all up. Now, let's talk about the black guarded push buttons. And that could be, for example, the ditching push button or the engine manual start. Those have the potential to cause a significant effect on our aircraft. For example, pressing the ditching push button over here is not just going to shut down both of our engine bleeds and therefore the packs, it's also closing the outflow valve and closing other valves on the aircraft. That can have a significant impact on the safety of our flight, in that we are causing quite some trouble for our airplane. So that's why obviously we do have a guard on this one. Likewise, the engine manual start, push that with the engines running and you are going to have a date with your chief pilot. So let's go ahead and turn that thing back off again down here and put that guard back down. Well, and that is kind of what separates the black guarded buttons from the red guarded buttons. You see, when we are turning a black guarded button on, we can also turn it back off again. The action is reversible. However, that is not the case with the red guarded button, with a couple exceptions. Otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here as human pilots, otherwise we could do everything by the computer, could we? So let's have a look at some of the red guarded buttons. We got switches here, like for example the IDG controls. We got the manual passenger oxygen release, or oxygen mask release button down here. In both of those cases, when the IDG is disconnected, your IDG needs to be physically reset by maintenance personnel. You can't do that in flight as a pilot. Likewise, if you release the passenger oxygen masks, you will cause your passengers to pull them towards you, therefore start the physical chemical reaction, and that is going to drain the chemicals. Therefore the mask can no longer be used. So those actions are irreversible. However, there are a couple ones where we gotta say like, wait a moment, is that really true? And those are namely 4 switches in this cockpit. Number 1, we got the engine and APU fire push buttons up here, or the fire switches, and then we also have the high altitude landing push button. Let's start with the high altitude landing push button, because that's a little easier one. When that one is turned on, what happens is, number 1, the pressurization system is now enabling the cabin pressure to go up to about 13,000, 14,000 feet-ish to allow us landing at the world's highest airports without causing the cabin pressure excess cabin altitude warning when the cabin altitude goes over 10,000 feet. But it's also doing another thing, and that is the reason why that one has a red guard. That button also resets the automatic logic for the release of the passenger oxygen masks from 14,000 feet up to 16,000 feet. And that is a permanent change. This cannot be undone until you land the aircraft the next time. So that is the reason why this is a red guarded button, while you can always reset the logic of the cabin pressure access cabin altitude. Now, there is another one though, which is really interesting, and those are the engine and APU fire push buttons. So those have a red guard around them, quite clear. Pushing that is going to kill the engine. So far so clear. But why exactly is that a red guarded function? Well, for that, let's first of all wait for that thing to shut down. I mean, this is taking quite a long time here, isn't it, Phoenix? That should definitely be going quicker. Now it's running down, okay. So, what exactly is that button doing? Well, it's doing several things at once, really. On one hand side, it's shutting down things like the fuel, things like the pressurization, and so on. And that is all stuff which can be reversed. However, while we are waiting for this to happen, the airplane could encounter control problems. For example, if you're in cruise flight and you are shutting down an engine like this, you're definitely not easily going to recover from that. You need to lose altitude and so on. In other words, you got to do something that you cannot easily reverse. However, those buttons are a little bit special in that we can actually reverse them unless we have fired the agents. Now, pressing that button arms the agent push buttons. If that button is in, you cannot fire the agents. That's the reason why this is a red guard, while technically speaking we can just put that switch in again. Now let's open that crossbleed valve, that starter, give a little bit of thrust over here on our running engine, and then you will see that we can absolutely restart our engine number 1 with a crossbleed start over here. See, a little bit of thrust, now we got the pressure, and we can see that the engine is starting again. It's going to take a little bit longer, but it will eventually come back to life. But the simple fact that we may not be able to maintain our altitude, and the fact that significant control problems can arise from pressing that push button, means that this button is actually required to be red guarded, while technically speaking you can reverse the engine shutdown. But let's just monitor that engine start over here. You can see it's really slow compared to normal. That's because we're doing a crossbleed start though, not because we used that red push button. Like if I just shut engine number 2 down normally and then did a crossbleed start with engine number 1, then it would take that long as well. But here we go, the engine is now starting again. So once it has completed the startup, let's just go ahead and have a look if any of those engine systems is not reversed. So here we are, engine start, engine is available. So close, norm, auto. The only thing we see here is an engine generator fault that remains. Now that one, turn it off, turn it back on again. And you can see now even the engine generator is coming back to life down here. So well, a little bit of a special case here, the engine fire push buttons, but generally speaking, normal push button, no great effect on the aircraft. Black guarded push button, great effect on the aircraft. Red guarded push button, irreversible. Well, my friends, and that's everything there is to it. I do hope that you found this one interesting. Now, if you do happen to know any official Airbus manual, and with that I'm not talking about links to Prune, etc. If you know any official Airbus manual where this is detailed, I would absolutely love if you could advise of that in the comments below. As far as I'm aware, there is no official documentation on this, but nonetheless, thank you very much for watching. Interested in your comments, and if you're interested in more backgrounds like this one, as always, put it in the comments below, like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.